Hello, everyone. It is Wednesday. It is our special time with Ricky Williams. And today, Lillian Bennett is with us. Did I say your name correctly, Lillian?
You did, thanks.
All right. So, Lillian's our moderator today, and she's got her wonderful background. Am I allowed to talk about your chart, Lillian?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So she's a Sag Sun, which is all the gold on the left, and the Scorpio rising with all that, black on the right. And then she's got a Cancer moon, which I must be reflected in the whites and grays there. So, looking good, looking good. You got your colors down. Okay.
I'm definitely mapping them to your ideas today.
Oh,
'Cause joy, but I have found through podcasting it makes a difference.
yeah. It does. When we pop to our aura, then everyone loves us.
Ah,
I mean, I don't know. That's one idea anyway. Okay. All right, Lillian, take it away.
absolutely, absolutely. And so I wanted to say thank you both for inviting me. There's something about being invited that's really like groundbreaking or gets people out of their shell. And so I wanted to thank you for that. And then you asked me to get questions. And so I went back over the material that you've provided so far. So the first couple of shows, including the first one where Andrea was on her own, talking about where she's coming from. And then I went through the node, Mars, Venus, and a few others. And the last one that you had with Jay-Z, the moderation with Jay-Z. And I really appreciate it because there are not a lot of ways to have this conversation where you don't end up with folks who either have talked about it ad infinitum or they don't want to hear about it at all, or they don't have the capacity to speak to it. And I can't wrap this little piece up without saying the fact that this is about the intersection of race and astrology and not about everything astrology gets wrong about race, I think is really helpful. And that I'm coming to this with a sense of prayer and exploration. And that includes like all of our ancestors, all of our progeny, and because we're sticky, the people we talk to get ideas around. And so once again, I just really want to thank you. So the first question I wrote down was about the node. And it's going to speak to dynamic tension, but I'll just give the question. Do the nodes provide reflections of solutions to tensions between people, tensions that can become explosive like race? Are there remediations for othering? I love how you talk about othering. So are there fixes for that? And conversely, is there a healthy expression that doesn't need fixing at all?
Ricky, you want to talk?
You go for it.
Why? This is your show.
I'm curious. No, I'm curious. I'm curious how you answer this question.
Okay. Well, that was like three questions in one. So I'm just gonna answer the first one about the nodes. I mean, I think what we learned from the nodes is the dancing back and forth between things. I think in astrology, a lot of things are a one-way street. Like your sun's in Sag, so you're just Sag, right? But the nodes are like your north node's in Sag, your south node's in Gemini. You're gonna dance between two things, and I think, um, and it's cyclical, right? Like, do we go towards our north node or do we build on our south node? And it really depends on where the planets are. Is like, do we go here? Do we go here? So I think, racial tensions, like you brought up dynamic tension, is one of those things where it's like it goes here and then the planets move around and we go back here and then we go up here and we go forward and we go back. And so it is one of those, the nodes teach us to dance back and forth, like look to the back where we've been, look to what could be where we're growing, I mean, that's just my initial thought.
Yeah. Well, I think it's the question of dynamic tension. I think we get it in astrology. We get it with the nodes. We get it with the opposition aspect. We get it with the all house axes. And for me, from what I've been trained, this my teacher is like put this line in my head is that all aspects are about integration. And And so I think if the goal is integration, and I think in order to move towards integration, you have to be conscious of both sides of the pole. You know, it's like so much of the work of Carl Jung and a lot of depth psychology comes back to the balancing integration of two opposing forces. Some people say, you know, that in front of all of life is sex. And I mean, sex is the positive and negative polarity integrating for creation. And so I think for me is we can focus on problems or we can focus on out creating the problems. Or even problems are only problems when we don't think we could do anything about them. When we think we can do something about them, right? They're food for our growth and development.
Well, that answer. What was your second question?
Yeah, thanks for that. So the second one, are there remediations for othering?
Oh man, othering. That's so interesting. So othering, just for the people listening, would be like saying there's like the dominant group and then everyone else is the other, right? Like that's a cultural thing that happens, right? And so I guess in racism theory, we would say that perceptively white people have been the dominant culture. I mean, that's how people position it, but that's not true. But that's how people position it. And then everyone else is the other. Is that true?
I would say it as white supremacy presupposes that white people should be in charge and everybody should help them.
Interesting. It'd be cool if we like tip the tables and we said we just made it a world where black people were in charge and then we othered white people like that. That's really cool.
I think it gets
Well,
more into sorry, go ahead.
no, no. Well, I think that's kind of what happened. That's kind of what happened in Reconstruction in the South. And, but maybe, not maybe, but it happened a little bit too early. I think the beauty of astrology is you look at a chart and when you see the chart, it doesn't say black, white, Hispanic. It doesn't say any of that on the chart. You know, you get symbols, and whether it's a cockroach or a dog or a white person or a black person, right? You're talking about something deeper inside of us. And I think the more we can recognize what's on the inside and deal with that, you know, and then I think that's integration. And I think you know, yoga, right? That we all have our own personal integration from our inner lives and our outer lives, because to our outer lives, very much the inner life feels like the other, and to our inner life is like, what the hell are you doing, right? It feels like other to the outside of us.
I love that you
I
bring up
like
the chart because, oh, sorry. Because the individualism of astrology and saying that each of us has our own color spectrum or our own chart or our own whatever, it's like everyone is the other. You know what I mean? Like everyone, there is no dominant group when you take astrology and you apply it. So that's a really good point, Ricky. And I'm not
yeah.
sure how to answer the question of like, is there a remedy for othering? I think there's probably 1,000 remedies for othering, like, and it would depend on each moment and how the person is othering and what to do. But I agree with you that othering should be remedied because it assumes a dominant group. I mean, I think that's the error there. I mean, equal in saying there is no dominant group would probably be.
Well, and just to kind of toss in some more, like I've been listening quite a bit, and so I'll share like when I think about othering, I think about Sagittarius, I think about the ninth house, I think about a Gemini or Sagittarius nodal axis, I think about Pluto and Sagittarius, right? Like I think about a certain thing, I go somewhere with it, right? I don't know, because those stories can be like the othering, you know, that happens. Like Jerzy Kaczynski's The Painted Bird. Do you remember that book, or do you know about that book? It's a cool book by this guy who talks about the Holocaust and about how if you paint a bird, or this was an anecdote he told, so I don't know about it, but anyway, if you paint a bird and send it amongst its bird people, right? They'll kill the bird. And it happens over and over and over. And I don't remember the species, but it was an analogy for the Holocaust that, you know, the Jews had become the painted bird. And so they were being hunted down. And it was told sort of through this young boy. I can't remember. So I'll get to read it again because I brought it up. But it's kind of that concept of, you go abroad, like I'm thinking from a Sagittarius, you go abroad to look for information, right? And the truth, and you find out the truth over and over so you don't get hung up on it. But then you come back and no one cares, and you were gone for chores. You know what I mean? And they don't want to know about it. Or like, I'm just thinking of all of these things. Some of it falls very much in the category of astrology can help you address it, because if you see a Sagittarian, you tell them where they're going. But
Well, yeah,
underlying.
yeah. So if you're talking about Sagittarius, I think that's why Sagittarius is the preacher, right? It's because Sagittarius, in my point of view, right, shouldn't care if other people are ready for it. It's like when you're on fire with the good message, you just have to write a book, right? Publish it. You just have to put the good word. You have to put the good word out there. And part of othering, right, there's a spiritual dimension to othering. And talk about remedy. The first two words that came to my mind were love and work. Love and work. Because growing up in the other the white guys on the football team, right? When we're not working together, right, we notice the other. But when we're working together, there is no other. We become one because we have some shared purpose and there's effort moving in a shared direction. And then love, is for me as a heterosexual man, is the other is the woman, right? And little kids are like, oh, girls are gross, right? Boys are gross, right? But then as we get old enough to appreciate and recognize the other, it's motivation to start changing our attitudes towards the other and being willing and open to take it in.
So is the painted bird analogy is really interesting. Never heard of that one. So is there something about when somebody starts to excel or stand out or be different? I mean, could it be that the non-dominant group at times excels to the point that the dominant group gets scared and then starts othering them? Or like, because if you're just blending in the background, maybe you don't even get othered.
Also riots, this reconstruction you're talking about. People were excelling. It threatened white folks who were able to create devastation.
Yeah. But even this is still a projection, right? Again, if I have a point of view that there's something that I can't handle and something, it activates the survival instinct. I think I think this is why Saturn has a tendency to get a bad reputation. Is Saturn is the part of us that is responsible for making sure that we persist. Mm-hmm. So anything that is threatening to us, that's like all the things that we hate when our loved ones do, hide stuff, manipulate, lie, right? All of these things, right? They come from Saturn, right? And aside from the moral judgment of it, it's an awareness that someone is afraid to share something because their Saturn has told them it's not going to go well for me. And so, it kind of comes back to love and work, right? If we feel that we are meaningfully connected to what we're doing in life, we don't have enough time or energy or resources to be worried about what someone else is doing. And to me, this is, I have a different take. I have a slightly different take on Pluto, but part of what you were talking about with the Holocaust is very much, to me, it's very much Pluto. And to me, this is the deepest I can go with this question, because I think at our deepest core, we have an awareness that we are all part of the same entity, and you can imagine if the blood cells and the epithelial cells, right, started getting into a fight, right? When that happens, we call it cancer, and it has the ability to kill us. So I think, right, and I think if the blood cells, right, when they're healthy and happy, they're so focused on being blood cells. Again, they're not worried about the epithelial cells. So, and when we have this deep need to be part of one, right? If the part of one is opposed to another, watch out, right? Watch out, because the dark side of it's a deeper form of othering. And it comes from the need to be one, right? The need to be one. And I think if that gets inverted, we get the darkest of the dark.
I would like to build on 2 points that Ricky made that I just want to make sure we notice. One is the whole one about working together. And if you have a shared purpose, things like othering go out the window or racism go out the window. That is actually so brilliant because, I think if you're trying to build a rocket ship or something like that, it's like you don't have time for racism because you're so busy on your goal. So I think that's a really good point. Like, so that number one. Number two, Ricky kind of brought up underexpressed people in the dominant field as then othering people. It's like that's also a really good point. If we get, the people who are in the dominant group and they're not doing their work, their good work in life, then they start looking at the other people and noticing, oh, them, and they should be looking at themselves like man in the mirror. You know what I mean? It's like you be better. Don't worry about these other people. You be better. Like, and I like both those points.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a lot to think of. I don't think I've said this yet, but I plan on listening to this after it gets published because I'm trying to stay focused on asking you guys questions. So the next part that I sent was Carolyn Casey saying our imagination lays the tracks for the future. We do it, and so I just thought, why not the past? And then I wrote an alchemical thing, and I'm sorry if I'm not coming in 100%. Solve et coagula. I just wanted to toss this out to you two. So it's an alchemical reference, and it's Latin, but I can't tell if it's from ancient times, and it's to dissolve and then come back together. And that fits exactly with what you were saying about the Holocaust. It feels extreme. It feels like impossible. And so I think about that with the projection and avoidance of the shadow, which is what I kind of go to when folks don't want to, I don't know, look at their own lives and be busy with their own lives. They're doing something else. So the next question I have is really, okay.
Well, I just think it's interesting about dissolving and coming back together. So one of the things about color theory that's really been really interesting to me, where astrology comes in the mix, and if we look at, your background, Lillian, and like how blinging you are, it's like when we take color out of skin tone and we take it into the color of auras and things like that, it does dissolve everything. And then if let's say we dissolved color from skin tone into chart tone, and then no one is other, and it's like I like that idea of how astrology dissolves and then we can come back together all blinging up, and it's like then we're all the painted bird, right? What if we have a tribe of painted birds? Like there is no other bird, Just a thought. Should have let you ask your question.
No, I actually love that. And I used to work with macaws, so the idea of painted birds is amazing. You know what I mean? So like I get it. Like I love that you're subverting it, because the book is pretty sad, but like the fact that happens to everyone who glows up, right? That somebody becomes jealous or something like that. So the alchemical component of it, I think, is really interesting. And then, when she talks about our imaginations laying line for the future, she's kind of warning us away from creating futures through our vivid imagination that we don't want any part of, that don't reflect what nourishes us, that it contains all kinds of damaging things or is outside of reality. So I love that. And the deeper meaning of solve et coagula is dissolve the material and come back together with the spirit. So I like that idea as well. And so the next question I have is about teleology. So I've really been enjoying hearing about like genetics and the four. I can't ever remember them when I want to, but I wanted to kind of talk about teleology and its path from ancient history to now, and see if that if Andrea, if you can speak to that, or if that was a Project Hindsight thing.
Teleology?
Yeah, I mean, not that they came up with it, but that they rediscovered it.
I went to that Project Hindsight thing in Cumberland. I never heard the word teleology there.
Okay.
But I was sick for part of the time, so I could have missed it. Yeah, no, I mean, I think teleology is just a concept that exists in ancient Greece. I mean, they talk about telos endlessly, like in the Bible. Demetra told me in the Bible, Jesus says, "I've reached my telos and now I can die." It's like that's biblical. But I actually learned about it at a history of science convention where all these scientists were talking about teleology. So that's where I learned of it. But I don't know,
Mm.
what's your question about it?
Well, it was starting a road down to the next question, which was, are there investigations around the mundane astrology that deep dive into the patterns around tribalism, community organization, slavery, or imprisonment?
I think
Hmm.
And the
Ricky.
goal there was to get to like Piscean, right? Like if we're going from dissolve to recreate, can we see any of that? And I think you both have said you're not into mundane astrology, but it's sort of the idea of exploring,
Yeah.
right?
Ricky knows a lot more of the history, don't you?
I know a little bit, but I, two ways I want to answer the question. Um, I believe we have earthly charts, and wherever we go next, I believe we have charts there. And it's like the earthly chart is serving the soul. We call it the soul or the spirit chart.
Right.
You know? When I think of soul and spirit, it to me it aligns with groups of people. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like if we say the spirit of the times or the soul of the times, we're talking about how a group together has all been moved by something similar, something related to each other, right? And I think as we evolve and we can see if we go back far enough in time to see the Neanderthals, is that as we grow in time, we have the opportunity to become more refined, you know, less gross, you know. And then you start to look around, especially in places like Portland, right? You don't just see one race, right? The races are starting to intertwine and overlap. And I think the way it's heading, especially as astrology becomes more popular, we're going to see groups, right? We're going to see Saturn people and Mars people. Because to me,
Yeah.
the planets are the key to our aptitudes, to our potentials. And if we're here to do some kind of work, what we need to accomplish that work are our aptitudes and our potentials. You know? I imagine a room full of Saturn people, you know, and right, they're all sharing stories of the deals they got, and and they're high fiving each other, Whereas if they're around their Jupiter friends are rolling their eyes at how cheap and petty they are, So there's something when you get around people who can appreciate you. Oh wow, right? The greater opportunity to be nourished and bring your potentials into greater and greater manifestation.
I
And there
love
were
when
two.
anyone talks about greater manifestation. Always getting better.
Well, always get better. And to me, right, it's Telios, right? Is that we're growing into something. And I found this concept really through you, Andy. And I've studied evolutionary astrology, but when you read evolutionary astrology and you read about teleology, it's like they're saying exactly the same thing. One of my favorite quotes. I'm gonna write this on my gravestone. Life happens for us, not to us.
That's kind of entitled. No, I'm just kidding.
Of course. Right. That's claiming my birthright to grow into what I have the potential to grow into. And if we don't claim that, right, no one's gonna give it to us.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that comes to mind about teleology and the fight against racist ideas basically is that all of us need to be developing our soul one transit at a time. Just like Ricky's saying that teleology is kind of like evolutionary. And the way it's similar is that we are, evolutionary looks at soul development. That's why people obsess on the North Node is like soul development. Oh, it's like, well, teleology looks at every planet in the chart as we're supposed to develop our soul one transit at a time. And it's
Right.
like we should never let any kid of any race ever go underdeveloped ever. And if we have just developing people all over, I don't think we'll have this othering problem as much. If, you know, it's like that's when people are underfunded, they can't develop at a level, or if they're, you know, kept in a jail cell, they don't get the supplies they need to develop, or like there's all these things, you know, about the systemic racism that goes on that really prevents development. And I think that's probably one thing teleology knows.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
that's beautiful, because if we, you know, teaching a workshop on I call it parenting, but it's really nurturing potential. You know, and I think if we understood like how sacred human life is, and because there's all in all of us, right? If we are in the right environments and we are nurtured, we all have the potential to grow into something that can be useful, that can contribute something to the world. And
Right.
I think it's a mindset. It's a celebration of potential. And part of, I think, accessing potential is the use of our imagination. You know, when I hear the word imagination, my astrological mind goes immediately to Neptune. And if I'm talking to someone about Neptune, I might say Neptune is our ability to see the things that don't yet exist, right? Or to see the essence inside the form of something, right? Because the essence inside of us is what has the potential to manifest through us. But it's like, how are we utilizing our imagination? Are we imagining our growth and our development and our flourishing? Ooh, I love that word, flourishing.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
because it's one of those things where there's no judgment. It's like we all, in every opportunity, right? We have the opportunity to take a step closer to flourishing. And you know, being a professional football player, it's the thing that I love the most, is that every day, you know, at least the ideal was everyone in the building was dedicated to our flourishing. It's in one dimension, but it's still wonderful to be in an environment that is supporting you, you know, to do your best, to be your best.
Yeah.
It makes me want
Yeah.
to say hashtag thrivalism.
Well, I find it so fascinating because, you know, I shared a little bit about my history from Washington, D.C. I moved to Seattle at the right time and so started working for Microsoft. I was dazed and confused by their DEI process that started with white women. And all I could think through the whole event was how clever. Uh, that's not really diversity at all. And I had the opportunity, pardon me, to work with LeBron James and his team, and to really kind of see that professional athletes are, like you're saying, really invested in. Like your physicality is a huge deal, and everything that is an overlap with your physicality will be provided for.
Yeah.
And so that's on top of what I assume was a fairly corporate experience.
It depends on the environment. There's some teams that are more corporate, some teams that feel more like family. But you know, I think for me, growing up in that environment, is as I moved away from football, as I applied the exact same kind of training and ideal to the work I do with people in astrology.
I find that with many professions. Like that's my curiosity around astrologers. Like I'm always badgering Andrea for more information about her translating, you know, and then like in addition to watching the stuff that you guys put out, I watched the deaf community piece that you did and watched you translate for an hour with someone, and I was like, that community is missing, you know. And for me, I also have a podcast, Sky Notes Astrology. We're going to put out something from Sam Reynolds on diversity, that he worked on getting what was the blockage for folks. And the blockage was, are we invited? Do you want us here? And figuring out what different marginalized communities are and what that means in astrology. And for me, it has been really shocking to think of astrology being anyone. You know, I spent a lot of time, I worked at Microsoft for 14 years. So my side hustle was volunteering for Greg Nalbandian at Norwalk, and working in the bookstore. I got to see everyone pile by. And, you know, I didn't even go to lectures because I just got the tapes and stuff like that. And the first time I met somebody who was like, I was so worried about Ronald Reagan that I called his people to tell them the astrology was so bad right before he got shot. And I was so offended that he liked Ronald Reagan, and it had to like redo my whole, mindset that astrologers could be anyone. And there's whispers that Steve Bannon does astrology, and he's not my favorite guy. But I want to get back to the questions. And one of the things that's been rocking my world has been how you all talk about Mars. And I have Mars conjunct Uranus and Pluto. It's kind of a little sandwich, opposed Saturn with Chiron. The Mars is in the 11th house. And my sense is I'm supposed to be doing a lot more Mars. But my upbringing was such that meant I will fuck you up if you get on my nerves. And it's not who I am. It's not what I'm about. And so I just wanted to touch on the Mars. And so what I wrote was releasing the energy that builds over this planet's transit or emphasis seems to be a great solution. Until I heard about the remediation, it didn't occur to me that women's periods could be unintentional remediation for Mars. Andrea talks about this along with self-harm. And then I related it to the South Node. But what I would like to hear is, the full passion of Mars, the full execution and expertise, the arete, as it were, of Mars in its best form. What is y'all's vision of that? And do you see an intersection with race on that?
I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is in mythology, at least the Greeks, right? They didn't pay too much attention to Mars. Romans were definitely more Marsian. And for me, like my ears went up when you said that's not you. Right? We all got a Mars, right? We all got a Mars, Right. And yeah, Mars hurts. Okay. And for me, if I'm talking to someone about Mars, the one thing that you have to come to terms with Mars is that there is going to be collateral damage. Right? Are you going to be the victim of that collateral damage? Right? Or are you going to be the perpetrator of that collateral damage? To me, that's the first question. Okay. And then I think dark Mars, right, is unnecessary and excessive bloodshed. Okay. Right. And I think of a surgeon, and a scalpel, right? Is that and this is with the arete, right? The courageous surgeon who's done his work, right? With that scalpel it can save lives. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. But one that's careless, not paying attention. Right. For me, Mars is about the magnitude and the aim. Right. If you're precise, again, there's still going to be a scar, right? But that scar is worth it because my heart works now. So the first place with Mars is the willingness to get a little bit dirty, right? The willingness to hurt someone. And it doesn't mean, to me, if you have the willingness to hurt someone, oftentimes you don't, right? Because you can look them in the eye and you can draw the line and show your teeth and they get it. Okay, all right, got it. Yeah, got it. It's funny, like my wife has Mars in Cancer in the 7th house. So, someone could say, that points to me, right? She married a football player with a Cancer moon. And I remember the moment that after we were married, the moment that I really fell in love with her, is there's something about her and my son, right? They just always butt heads, to the point where she kicked him out of the house. And I was proud of her for kicking him out of the house. She was protecting her home. And I said, I'm not going to do it. I can't be the one to do it, but if you make the call, 100% I'll support you. Right. And she did it. But right, there was the collateral damage. She was feeling bad. I kicked my husband's, child out of the house and so, but every time I would try to talk to her about it, right, the defenses would come up and it wouldn't go anywhere. Right. And one day we were driving and I pushed a little bit harder than normal. Right. And she turned to me and she said, fuck off. Right. Right. I like, she was mortified. But for me, I got excited. Right. I got excited because, right, the Mars, the anger that she wasn't willing to own. Okay. It finally came out. And I feel like after that, things started to move. Yeah. So, And I think it's easier for men who have been trained as athletes, right? Because we've been given a lot of Mars training. It's experience, right? And I like to say the scariest thing to a man, right, is a pissed off woman, right? So we can understand, because to me it's the intersection of race, but we have to say the intersection of race and gender. And
Yes.
in Mars, it's obvious to see with different races, but to me, it's even more obvious to see, right, with different genders. And I on Tuesdays I do a chart reading practice where I find a cool chart and we put it up and we talk about it. And Mary Kay Latorno, Seattle, Washington, yeah. Oh man, okay, oh man, right. Looking at her chart, right, and how it like changed everyone's like reality, right? It's because there was a woman, right, who was, right, we can say a lot of things about it, but a woman who was expressing her Mars. Yeah.
Well, I mean, is there something to be said for like you guys keep dancing around like the perfection use of Mars? I mean, I think anything can be, somebody can wield their sword perfectly and no one gets cut, but like out of the watermelons, I'll get cut off the vine. Like whatever we need gets harvested, but we don't necessarily need to hurt anyone, right? And I think like, but there's something to be said of the dominant group is allowed to use their Mars. And then the other group, if they use their Mars, they get yelled, they're in trouble for Marsing, right? Like, because they're the other, oppressed group. Those in power can Mars their face off because they have backing and bodyguards and all that stuff. And then the other group is just like, I Mars and now I got put in detention or whatever,
Yeah.
So I think a lack of othering would be if everyone's allowed, if like it's a dance of Mars and no one's getting hurt, but everything's getting harvested, that would be cool.
Yeah, I agree with you, but the reality is, in order to get to that perfected state, you got to cut some people. And if you're too afraid to start wielding the sword, and again, the aim is perfection, that I don't cut anyone. But if we're too afraid to wield the sword because we're afraid we might hurt someone, then Mars gets retarded. It gets slowed down.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like how surgery, right? Like if we have like a ulcerative wound inside of us festering, we need to get cut in order to heal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like Mars can be very healing. Like if anything's festering, maybe being cut would feel good. That's what cutters say. Is they always say that there's something emotional going on under the surface, and then when they cut, they feel much better. I mean, and
Yes.
that's like, can there be cuts that are only healing?
Yes. Well, I think cuts are healing to Mars, right? Because there's something about, for me, my mom was kind of physical, right? And she had something called my medicine. She had this extension cord with tape on it for the handle, And when she got upset, she'd bring it out. And my mom is an Aries with Mars conjunct the ascendant, right? And when I had a mark, oof, it was like I was more proud of the whooping. When I didn't have a mark, it was like I didn't have anything to show. But the mark showed what I overcame.
Right. That's interesting.
Like your puppy's in the house when your house is burning down, and something tells you, I got to get that puppy, and you run in and get the puppy, and you get a scrape on your arm. Right? You're wearing that scrape with pride, right? Because it's a badge of honor of your courage that you did not back down.
You're like a Mars expert.
Yeah.
Can I go back to something from before?
Oh, there's one more part of Mars, the sexual passion part of Mars. And maybe grass, but it's Mars. Okay? So, I wake up in the morning and I have a really big erection. Right?
Astrology is X-rated school.
And I'm poking my wife in the back, right? That's a Mars transit.
Oh, I love that. That's awesome.
Oh,
don't other your erection. That's all I have to say.
No, we have tinier erections, yes. Andrea. They're much tinier.
Claim your erection.
Yes.
That's right.
But part of it does put my wife in a Mars situation, right? She either has to like fire up or she has to say no, right? But part of my job is I have to have enough Venus in the relationship, right, that she has some motivation, right, to deal with Mars.
Yeah, to come get Mars. I mean, question I had, because when you were talking about Venus and the moon, and I think it was in the moon episode, I was thinking Venus is not emotion, it's what you need to have emotional security. And so it's the variety of things that you look for to create whatever your internal homeostasis is. And then Venus becomes the push, which is kind of a nice way to think about Venus, because it's pushing Mars to go get the thing it wants. And it can push as hard as it wants, and that's its only job. And then the moon comes back and says, all right, that's plenty for today, kind of idea.
Oh, I like it.
I'm still stuck on the football. Okay, so I'm back to the football
Oh
coach
yeah.
and development theory. So you know how football coach, like I got the phrase always getting better from my brother's football coach in high school. His name was Coach Clough, and he's always like, always getting better. That's what he'd always say.
Yeah,
And like
yeah.
I was thinking about Estelia, all this is totally an aside, not racism at all, but like we could totally be like with all our kids, it's just like always getting better with your development. It's like that's like what if we were just like football coaches on development theory?
That's me. That's me.
It's
You
not
know?
bad. It's not bad.
Yeah.
I mean, I got trained by a guy who was a baseball and football trainer, and it was the clearest education I got on kind of how to be in life, just for high school. But it was a lot. And Kankyo Kaizen is the Japanese idea of that for business. And like I said, I used to work at Microsoft, so it says my connection's unstable. I'm gonna hang for a sec. Anyway, my husband and I used to do these summits to map out our relationship goals, which was really just covertly, what do you want this year? What are you doing this year? How can I be a support? How can I get out of the way? Like the current one example is I am never going to be quiet enough for my husband. So he gets the house until 10 a.m. We both work at home. And so he gets the quiet. And then when it's time to join each other, we can feel that, the lubrication of society, of socializing together.
That's beautiful.
We want to see each other.
That is beautiful. And I think, I think one of the hardest things we do in life is mate with with the other. I think it's one of the greatest challenges in life.
Two-person container.
Yeah.
I only mate when I'm scheduled to. Scheduled
perfect.
sexual.
That's perfect. And I mean the mating beyond the sex, and if we are tying mating to sex, it's that you keep enjoying it, right? You keep enjoying it over time. And that is so sacred, It is so sacred because you take the love to a deeper, 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 deeper level. And I think to me, that's one of the greatest challenges in life. And if I'm talking to a football coach would never go into a game without a scouting report and without a game plan. You know, who are we playing, right? What are their gifts and challenges? What are our gifts and challenges? And how can we be victorious here? And if victorious is the way I approach relationships, victorious is that I support my wife in being all that she's capable of being, and that she supports me in the same way. But the more that we're clear about that and we can communicate about it, it gets much easier. I joke that when the guys come over and get into astrology, right? Poor women, because the guys are gonna have the game plan. I already see myself doing it. Again, talking about my wife's Mars and Cancer, and we traveled this past weekend, and it seems like every time she has a Mars return, every time we're in an airport, it's like it's trippy every single time, And I knew, right, driving, and it was silent. You could feel it. Right, my son, you'll like this one, Andy. My son also has his Mars in Cancer, so he was born on my wife's Mars return, and so as we're leaving, okay, he gets a stomach bug. He starts puking, okay, right, and so you can see the Mars and Cancer starting to stir things up, and we land in LA, and it's like we're not talking to each other, and then we start having a Mars moment, talking loud to each other. And then I go into my coach's speech, okay, right? This is a Mars transit. We have to take care of each other, right? And don't be afraid of like this, right? This has to get out so we can go and have a good time, right? And it was 7 minutes, right? 7 minutes, this Mars expression, and we had a wonderful time as we cleared it out and got to work.
Yeah, you cut the mustard on that one. Dude, I think you can cut
Yeah, that's
mustard anytime. I don't think that hurts anyone.
Yeah, I'm looking for it, right? My wife's she's a Capricorn moon with Cap rising. And when I see that she's in a Capricorn moon, I grab the boy and I said, let's go, let's give mama some alone time. Let's get out of here.
that's
Well,
right.
it's just like I'm a schedule sexual, I also Mars on schedule. So it's like I think if you Mars on schedule, you're fine.
Yes, well
That's really
said.
cool.
Well said.
Well, I will say I do reject, my husband calls me like freedom fascist, right? Because when I think the best thing for astrology is it's a really good another filter for you to sit back and observe life so that you're filtering your reactions through the digestive life that you get to enjoy. Wrong, and I love thinking about transits and I'm getting so much from it. It is like a church of, I'm in my astrology book, I'm in my whatever cookbook, but the oh gosh, I lost my, oh sorry guys,
I was
lost my
saying,
train of
I was
thought.
thinking when you were saying that, I was thinking, Saturn opposing Pluto, Uranus. Is that what you said? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's close to your second Saturn return.
She's
So
done with it, I think.
yeah,
Not that I know.
right, so I was thinking, you can filter, but you got to be careful not to try to water it down.
Yeah.
You
But
know,
the juice of it is to observe it, right? And so I love that idea of remediation because there's something about creating a structure, like we've talked about relationship structures, and there could be many of them. I like the two-person one, but there's many. And the structure that I'm building is what's going to be for the next 20 years and what's getting dissolved. And I fucking hate everything that went. I'm not happy with that. I wanted to keep everything. I have a moon in Cancer. I love everything until, I don't know, until. And
until you
so,
don't, yeah.
right. And so the next part of life, I've gotten to the point where I don't know what it is that's coming. And so I'm trying to be ambivalent, about the structure because I don't want to cast it. You were saying the moon's impressionable, and I believe that. And I think sometimes people get frozen in an impression that's not good for them. And that's one of the joys of astrology, is that it can kind of help you snap out of it.
Yeah,
And you can
yep, yeah.
official.
Well, like even this show will evolve. Like Ricky and I started this show together, and it's like now we're having all these people on with us, who are you're doing brilliantly. I mean, like I feel like you've uncovered things that we never would have uncovered, just the two of us. And it's like, with Pluto and Aquarius, like I'm open to our show being a team show, or like we don't have to just. I don't want to get
I
in
like
trouble by Mars. I didn't want to say two-way. We're having a two-way for a second. Everyone got mad at us. No, I don't know. Am I allowed to say that, Ricky?
Yeah, you're not to say everything with me. All right.
I'm just
Better.
saying that we could break open and with the astrologers dealing with this 10-handed clock, it's like what are we in the mood for? It's like now we're in the mood for a work group on astrology and race, like like I don't know. I mean, Ricky and I would have to write that together, obviously, but
do an entire astrology channel with game shows and dating shows and news and whatever. You wouldn't do
it's
that.
not a game, okay?
You would just hire people to do it. I
I'd
want
be
to do.
down. I'd be
I want
down.
to get on Instagram and
Yeah.
do quiz shows about
I want to
astrology.
design
Right?
Ricky's background to his chart colors.
Please.
Oh my
Yes.
God.
I think that she's good at it.
Well,
She
Lillian
said,
has really inspired me with her background today.
"Oh, and this I got to tell you. So this is Amazon. It's like $30. That and the armament. Kids, I thought about you, Ricky. Your kids, if there's anybody at home, would love it because you get to
Yeah.
play, act, and all that stuff. And they're anything. You can get like a beautiful Italian villa. You can
Oh
get
wow.
any.
Okay, you guys, spoiler alert, but I had to show you that this is math. This is actually not just theory. Okay, spoiler alert, Lillian, I'm going to show you what I'm sending you in the mail. But I spent all day long finding the right proportions to your chart as a thank you for coming on today. But look at how it looks like your background. Okay,
Oh,
check this out. This is your Sagittarius sun, and then your Cancer moon is these white flowers. And then your Scorpio rising is these black flowers. But I had to get the right balance because I was trying all these black and yellows but it's like the gold, like in the Sag is that gold is really the Sag color. But It matches
Thank,
your background, kind of.
Oh, wow. It sure does.
that's fun. Thank you. You're so much fun. I can't wait to figure something out for you. I can't wait to see what it is.
Yeah.
Um,
I have a present for Ricky that I have to wait until Aries to send.
I
Got him.
love I saw that you said that to him, and I'm like, oh my God, I have to rethink all of my the opportunity to improve is irresistible, you know?
Yeah. Well, you really
Well,
improved our show with your presence.
well, and I'm really grateful. I feel like we got through every one of my questions. The last one, which we're not going to get to, but I'll put it out there, is how much of your ongoing work is research? And then I've heard a lot about where you think we're going on race. So I love that. I had a question about, do you think discussions lead to churn or evolution? So I'll just leave those for later.
Yeah,
Long time
good
listener,
question.
first time caller.
Yeah.
Ricky and I might need to have a production meeting. I don't know.
I appreciate it.
All right. Well,
Appreciate it.
thank you both. This has been a delightful hour. And I can't wait to see you next week, Ricky, with whatever you
Yeah.
got.
Yeah, I'll be ready.
All right.
Yeah,
All right.
thanks for the shows, guys. We'll
Yeah, you
keep
got
watching
it.
them.
Right.
Thanks.